Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 8th meeting of the Memphis and Shelby County Land Use Control Board. My name is Mary W. Sharp, and I will be serving as your chair today. We'll begin this morning's meeting with a roll call. Mr. Ragsdale, would you please?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Tolles?
Here.
Ms. O'Connell?
Here.
Mr. McKenna?
Here.
Mr. Gill?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Wilbanks?
Here.
Dr. Pritchard?
Here.
Chair Sharp?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. I would like to remind you that copies of today's agenda are located at the front right podium if you need them. If you wish to be a speaker on any case that is on today's agenda, please fill out an attendant speaker's card located in the front of the podiums. Once you have filled out the card, please bring it up front and hand it to one of our DPT staff members located on the left podium. When that agenda item is called, you will be given an opportunity to speak. At this point, I would like to read our conflict of interest statement. The adopted policy of the Land Use Control Board requires that any member of the board recuse himself or herself from any participation in the discussion or voting on any matter on the meeting's agenda in which he or she may have direct or indirect personal interest. The member shall vacate his or her seat during deliberation on any matter from which they have recused themselves. An abstention may substitute for a recusal for the purposes of maintaining a quorum. I would like to now get approval of our minutes from the last meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved, and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion amongst our members? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. Ragsdale, may I please get a secretary's report for this month and an explanation of today's procedures?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a secretary's report, so I'll go into the procedure for the meeting. At the beginning of today's meeting, we will establish a consent agenda for those items where no one in the audience or on the board is requesting an individual public hearing. After the consent agenda is established and approved, we will move on to the regular agenda. For each case on the regular agenda, the DPD planner will give a presentation. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation and any testimony from others who support the application. The applicant and supporters will be given a total of 10 minutes. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Next, the opposition will be given a total of 10 minutes to present their case. Following each speaker, the chair will ask the board members if they have any questions for that speaker. Finally, the applicant will then have a 3-minute rebuttal period under the same rules. Following the presentations and after the parties have been heard, the chair will ask if the board members have any additional questions of anyone who spoke. Then the chair will close the public hearing portion of the case, entertain a motion on the matter, discuss, and then vote on the application. If an applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing portion of the case, or if a board member wishes to hear any additional testimony from any party for additional clarification, a motion will need to be made along with a second, and then a 2/3 affirmative vote of the board is required to reopen the public hearing portion of the agenda item. If the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and the opposition will be allowed an equal amount of time to provide additional testimony. After the additional comments, the board will close the public hearing portion of the case and deliberate and take the final vote. Again, if any member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a case, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card. These are available at the front podium. Speaker's cards are not required of applicants since their names are already part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. I'd like to also announce that this month is Mr. McKinnon's birthday. So happy birthday, Mr. McKinnon, in February. Okay. The board is a supporter of the community involvement, and we welcome neighborhood comments and feedback. We are respectful of the fact that many of you have taken off work or adjusted your schedules to be here today. But we ask that your comments be made within the time frame allowed. If there are multiple speakers, please try not to be repetitive. so as to make the most of your side's 10-minute time allotment. Lastly, I'd like to ask you all to silence your cell phones so as not to interrupt or disturb anyone during today's proceedings. I will now move to the consent agenda. With our proceedings now explained, I would like to introduce to my right Ms. Lisa Wilbanks, who will be this morning's consent agenda chairperson. Ms. Wilbanks will read items 1 through 27 as a consent agenda. Once the consent agenda is read, if you wish to discuss one of these items individually, please come forward and give us the item number, and we will pull that case. We will then vote on the remaining consent agenda items as one vote. And following the vote, we will hear the cases that were pulled individually. Ms. Wilbanks, would you proceed, please?
Yes, ma'am. Item number 1, case SAC 2023-007 in Nutbush. The request is to close and vacate an alley between 3775 Longfellow Road and 3760 Whittier Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 2 has been withdrawn. Item number 3, case SUP 2023-028 in the airport adjacent. Request is a special use permit to allow apartments in the commercial mixed-use 3 district at 2491 Joy Lane. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 4, case SUP 2023-029 in Joffrey. The request is a special use permit to allow a drive-through restaurant in the Transit Overlay District located at 3341 Poplar Avenue. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 5, case PD 2023-028 in Orange Mound adjacent. The request is a major modification to allow self-service mini storage in Area B of the Lamar Crossing PD located at 2899 Lamar Avenue. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 6, case PD 2023-029 in airport adjacent. The request is a planned development to allow an 11-lot single-family residential development at 4701 Bowlingshire Drive. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 7, case SE 2023-04 in Raleigh, Egypt adjacent. The request is a special exception to allow tractor-trailer parking in the commercial mixed-use 3 district at 4866 Covington Pike. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 8, case SUP 2023-035 in Raleigh, Egypt adjacent. The request is a special use permit to allow contractor storage in the commercial mixed-use 3 district located at 4866 Covington Pike. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 9, case SUP 2023-038 in Cherokee. The request is a special use permit to allow vehicle repair in the commercial mixed-use 2 district located at 2961 Lamar Avenue. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 10, case MJR 2023-047 in Southwind adjacent. The request is a major modification to permit a larger sign than the OG district allows at 8700 West Trail Lake Drive. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 11, case MJR 2024-001 in Egypt adjacent. The request is a major modification to allow R6 district uses in Area B and revise road dedication and engineering standards in Bowland Ridge PD outline plan located at the southeast corner of Bowland Hughes Road and Coleman Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 12, case MJR 2024-002 in Wolf Chase adjacent. The request is a major modification to allow an increase in the signage area for Area B1 in Appling Farms Business Park PD Second Amendment, located at Appling Farms Parkway, approximately 980 feet from Appling Road. Staff recommendations approval with conditions. Item number 13, case MJR 2024-003 in Cordova. The request is a major modification to allow a restaurant located at 10111 Macon Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 14, case MJR 2024-004 in Bartlett adjacent. The request is a major modification to allow apartments with reduced building setbacks in the Raleigh Park SE-1 Neighborhood Center Revised General Plan located at 4655 Raleigh Egypt Road. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 16, case S 2024-001 in Cordova. The request is a 16-lot residential subdivision at 1260 Dexter Lane. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 17, case SAC 2023-009 in airport adjacent. The request is to close and vacate a segment of Copland Drive south of Stonebrook Avenue. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 18, case SD 2023-002 in airport adjacent. The request is a dedication of Coughlin Drive as a public right-of-way in conjunction with its closure. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 19, case SUP 2023-039 in Pinnacle Point. The request is a special use permit to allow a group daycare in the residential single-family 6 district as part of PD 94-302CC located at 7806 Windy Willow Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 20, case SUP 2023-040 in Autumn Ridge. The request is a special use permit to allow a convenience store with gas sales in the commercial mixed-use 2 district located at 6977 Winchester Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 21, case SUP 2023-041 in Southeast Memphis. The request is a special use permit to allow vehicle sales and repair in the commercial mixed-use 1 district located at 2830 Lamar Avenue. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 22, case SUP 2023-042 in Nutbush. The request is a special use permit to allow a dormitory and lighted recreation field in the residential single-family 6 district located at 3925 Chelsea Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. There is, however, one friendly amendment which states, number 7, music shall not be played or any public address system announced later than 9 p.m. Item number 23, case SUP 2024-001 in Orange Mound. The request is a special use permit to allow a restaurant with drive-in in the commercial mixed-use 1 district located at 2426 Lamar Avenue. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item number 24, case SUP 2024-002 in Fisherville. The request is a special use permit to allow lighted baseball fields and indoor recreation in the Conservation Agriculture District located at 9933 Paul Jones Road. Staff recommendation is hold for 1 month. Item number 26, case Z 2024-002 in Oak Haven. The request is a rezoning from the residential single-family 8 district to commercial mixed-use 1 district located at 3343 Winchester Road. Staff recommendation is approval. That is our consent agenda.
Ms. Wilbank, Madam Chair, I do have a couple of items to modify there. So I wanted to let you get through that because it's a long one, so I apologize. And you were right, Ms. Wilbanks. Item number 16 is a companion case, so that we have a card on 25. So we'll pull that from consent as well.
Okay.
And then item number 24, we have discussed some things to resolve that, so it can remain on consent as an approval with conditions.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Anyone now wishing to pull a case from the consent agenda, please come forward and give us the item number. Do we have anything else pulled? The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with 1 vote, subject to the recommendation of DPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only item number 15, is that?
No. 15, 16.
See, I couldn't hear you.
15, 16, 25, and 27.
I couldn't hear him. Okay. The item,
Wait a minute, hold up.
yeah, I couldn't hear him either.
Okay, well, thank you. We will get that resolved. We will make sure that everybody hears. So,
You can't
Madam
hear
Chair?
me? You
Yes.
can't hear
Can we
me?
read the items that will be heard?
Okay. Item numbers 15, 16, 25, and 27.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. The items, I'm going to read it again, just in case. The items on the consent agenda will now be voted on with 1 vote, subject to the recommendation of DPD. If the consent agenda is approved, only items number 15, 16, 25, and 27 will have full independent public hearings. By voting on the consent agenda, each board member is affirming that he or she has read the staff report and agrees with its findings and, where applicable, its recommended conditions. Can I get a motion, please?
Yes, ma'am. Move to approve item number 1, case SAC 2023-007 as a hold. Item number 3, case SUP 2023-028. Item number 4, case SUP 2023-029 as a hold. Item number 5, case PD 2023-028 as a hold. Item number 6, case PD 2023-029 as a hold. Item number 7, case SE 2023-004. Item number 8, case SUP 2023-035. Item number 9, case SUP 2023-038. Item number 10, case MJR 2023-047. Item number 11, case MJR 2024-001 is a hold. Item number 12, case MJR 2024-002. Item number 3, case MJR 2024-003. Item number 14, case MJR 2024-004. Item number 17, case SAC 2023-009 as a hold. Item number 18, case SD 2023-002 as a hold. Item number 19, case SUP 2023-039 as a hold. Item number 20, case SUP 2023-040 as a hold. Item number 21, case SUP 2023-041 as a hold. Item number 22, case SUP 2023-042 with the friendly amendment. Item number 23, case SUP 2024-001. Item number 24, case SUP 2024-002. Item number 26, case Z 2024-002.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion amongst our board members? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Dr. Pritchard, we're ready for the regular agenda.
I believe the first item, Madam Chair, is number 15.
Okay, is the applicant present? Item number 15, if you'd come up and give us your name and address, and then we'll hear a presentation of the case.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Jared Bingham, 1502 Harvard Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 38104.
Okay, we'll hear the presentation of the case at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kendra Cobbs, Division of Planning and Development. Good morning. So this is a request for a residential corridor deletion, and it is located on Scenic Highway. It's not far from James Road, the James Road intersection. The applicant is Mr. Jared Bingham, and the representation is Archimania. So this is located in Scenic Hills, and it's outside of the loop, and it's also Scenic Highway is just north of James Road. Looking at the vicinity map, these are the properties where public notice was sent. So 63 notices were mailed on January 12th, 2024 to the properties that are outlined in blue. So the zoning for the particular property is residential urban 3, RU3. It's surrounded by residential single family 10 zoning. There is also commercial mixed use 1 zoning that is to the south, and it abuts the subject property. And the subject property is marked by the pink star. Now, looking at the overlay map, this is a residential corridor overlay, and looking at the map, the property is marked by the pink star and this purple band that runs along Scenic Highway. That is the residential corridor. So we have a residential corridor that's on Scenic Highway from James Road, and it continues east to Highland Road, I believe that is. And just a little background on the residential corridor. So when you have a residential corridor, the proposed uses along that residential corridor should be residential. And if there is an instance where someone would like to do a non-residential project, as in this case, The applicant is proposing that there will be a social service institution at that location. So with that being a non-residential use, and this is along a residential corridor, in order to, well, one of the first steps in order to have that social service institution would be to remove the residential corridor overlay from that property. Looking at the land use map, also marked by the pink star, is the subject property. So this is about 11.47 acres. It's vacant land, and it is surrounded by residential single family. That's the Scenic Hills neighborhood to the north. There's also institutional use next door. That is a church. And then the red that is just south of the property is auto repair. And then you also have some single family and vacant property to the south. Now here are photos of the subject property from Scenic Highway looking north and south. And our Memphis 3.0 plan, based on the land use analysis, has found that the proposal is consistent with the future land use. The designation is primarily multifamily neighborhood. And so with this social service institution, what's proposed is that it would be studio and one-bedroom units that would help shelter it would be temporary housing for the unsheltered population and also some extensive case management. So with the one-bedroom and studio units, the Memphis 3.0 plan found that to be consistent with the primarily multifamily neighborhood designation. So just to conclude, this is a request to remove the residential corridor overlay at that one property. And there is also a companion case that would go to Board of Adjustment. It's been filed as a use variance for the social service institution. However, that case would not be able to proceed unless the residential corridor overlay is removed from that property. So it would be essentially held until this has been recommended from Land Use Control Board and then goes to City Council for a decision. So we do recommend approval, and that completes the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cobb. Are there any questions from the board members at this time? Okay, we'll go ahead and have a presentation by the applicant.
Yeah, hi, I'm Todd Walker. Whoa, too close to the mic.
And your
Todd
address?
Walker with Archimania, 663 South Cooper. We're the architect for the job. And I just wanted to, I think one thing that's not clear in the presentation, just as far as the design, is you can see that it's a heavily treed area. So the fact that we have these really small studios and really small cottages, we're trying not to take out any more trees than where the footprint of a structure is. So it's going to remain a heavily treed site. And, you know, the parking is minimal on this site. You can't imagine that there would be like an apartment complex where there are lots of parking. Parking is very minimal. And then also just the size of the structures alone and the height, they're all one-story small structures. So I just wanted to share that, and I think just follow the lead of the presentation that was just made. We're here for questions.
Okay, do we have any questions of the applicant at this time? Okay, hearing none.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Are there any renderings?
Any renters?
Renderings, I mean, do you?
Oh, renderings.
Yes.
There are renderings. I'm not sure if, is there a rendering in this package?
Well, I guess that wouldn't be necessary. You just asking to have the,
Yeah.
yeah, I got you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
Okay. We're ready for the opposition now. We have 7 cards, and so You only have 10 minutes, so try to make those 1.5 minutes count. Give us your name and your address as you approach, one at a time.
My name is Marilyn Dean Thompson. I'm at 2983 Carnoustie Road. As Ms. Cobb say, they sent out notices, but no one sent a notice to our address. We only found out last Thursday that this was going on, and we went to a presentation at Scenic Hills Methodist Church on Sunday. The way they presented this was there would be 24-hour armed security guard. What is that going to do for our neighborhood? Our property values will probably go down, and I'm pretty sure that they will. I've checked with the real estate agent and said that, yes, your homeowner's insurance will go up. And I can't afford it. I'm retired for the last 18 years, and I can't afford to go get a job. And I oppose this proposal, and I hope you consider my problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, give us your name and address and your statement. Please.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Williams. My address is 3183 Dumbarton Road. Right at this moment, I'm experiencing some people that's coming into the neighborhood that are not residents or homeowners. And I'm constantly calling the police, trying to get these people off of the corner. I live in a corner lot, and I'm looking at my cameras constantly. As of yet, I've been in the house for over 9 years. I've lived in the adjoining subdivision, which was Sky Lake. And I moved out of Sky Lake and moved into Scenic Hills. I am retired also from Memphis Transit Authority. They do not have any kind of transportation even coming into Scenic Hills subdivision. So you're gonna have these people running and walking all day and all night. I took the responsibility of my grandkids. I have 5 grandkids living with me, and I'm struggling to keep them safe in the neighborhood. And every day, we're looking at our cameras, seeing things that's going on even now. And if you bring these people into our neighborhood, what's going to happen is going to increase what's going on. We see them on our cameras messing with our cars, you know, and on the property all time of night. This is not what we need. And I purchased a home to feel safe in my home. And right now, with even the thought of this, I'm up all night long trying to realize what we're gonna come into dealing with this, because I've even rode around looking for the property. No, you don't see the property, but you know where it's gonna be. And to look at it near that railroad track, that track comes from North Memphis down on Hollywood, all the way back as far as it goes. And I just feel like it's unsafe for us. I'm a single woman in my home, and I look around at my neighbors. A lot of us are just trying to live there and live in peace. And instead, you bring in something into a house that is not to that level. So thank you. I appreciate it.
My name is Mary Toma. I live at 3029 Dumbarton Road in the Cove. I'm against having a commercial facility placed in a residential neighborhood. I don't think it's the best interest of either our neighborhood or the clients or residents of the Hub Village. Simply put, the residents of Scenic Hills don't want it here. We contend there must be other properties which need upgrading and would be more suitable for a social service institution instead of bringing the attendant noise, traffic congestion, and activity to our neighborhood. This parcel is right next to the Canadian National Rail line. The train tracks are heavily used with bone-rattling, seemingly endlessly long freight trains coming through day and night. It's not the bucolic and peaceful wooded area that is portrayed in the Hub Village design. I hope you will turn down this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Phyllis McLean. I live at 3075 Bannockburn in the Scenic Hills subdivision. We were never notified of this. There's over 300 properties that are going to be directly affected just in our neighborhood. We want to know if there's been a study done about the rezoning of this residential property to commercial use. and how that will affect our property values, crime, all of those things in our neighborhood. We do know this will draw people to the facility once they realize there's a shelter. It is not designed for emergency shelter, which is what they're saying, is what we've been told. This is going to be for traditional housing. We think this would be better served, more central in the community they're trying to serve, and to have multiple facilities like they do downtown on Washington, where not only they can provide emergency services, but that they can also provide the transitional housing. So we feel this would be woefully inadequate to even serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm opposed.
Okay, thank you. We have 5 minutes and 4 speakers left.
I'll try to make this as brief as I can.
Give me your
My
name.
name.
Give me your name and address, please.
My name is Robert Irwin Graham. My wife and I live at 3110 South Glengarry Road. On the maps that you see up there, all of the green area on the right of that, our subdivision is known as Scenic Hills subdivision. All the residential area on the left, that area is known as Sky Lake subdivision. It's all single family residential. In our neighborhood in Scenic Hills, we've got covenants that all homeowners have to obey that was done when the property was originally developed during the 50s and 60s. My wife and I have owned our home there since 1981. And all of our homes, we're not allowed to even have a fence in our, a little white picket fence in our front yard. That's our, we got building setbacks, minimum size, home sizes, things of that nature. This development, we only found out about this at all about a week and a half ago. We didn't know this was in the works at all. But there's a lot of people that are here today that don't want this. We just think that there's a lot better places in Memphis that would be more suitable for this, such as a commercial area, a closed hotel, or multifamily units or something. All of this green area is all single family homes. And this that we have, some of these units, these are individual buildings that are like 16 feet by 20 feet, and they don't even have restrooms. I didn't know that was possible to have something built for someone to have as a residence to live in, even temporarily, that you don't even have a bathroom in your building. They've got a group bathroom facility for the entire development for these people to use. But this is just not conducive to our neighborhood at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you only have 2 minutes left.
My name is Denise Brooks. I live at 3032 East Glengarry Road. Me and my husband bought the home in 2002. I'm asking each and every one of you not to do this to my grandchildren and all the other people's grandchildren in the neighborhood. We moved into this community because we want a better life for our children. We want to get them away from all the riff-raff of the world. All I'm asking you is to consider your children. We sit outside all night. I see a lot of my neighbors who walk up and down the street. We're free. We don't have to look behind our backs because a lot of us recognize each other. Do not do this to our community. Do not drag our community down. We want God to bless everybody, and we want everybody to have a home and a place to lay their heads. But Scenic Hill is not the area. Let us stay productive. Let our property values stay up. We have worked hard. We have retired. God delivered me from cancer. My husband has had multiple strokes. Do not do this to us elderly people or our children. We're trying to keep our neighborhood up. I oppose this, and I'm asking God to bless each and every one of your minds to recognize we just want a good, clean, decent life without the other riffraff of the world. We would like to sit out in our yard all night and enjoy our family in peace. I love you.
Okay, you got
30
1
seconds
minute.
and I'm through.
What's your name?
Kendall Anderson. I live at 2985 Carnoustie Road. Been there for about 30 years. A few years ago, I think it was the Commercial Appeal stated that Scenic Hills is the best kept secret in Memphis. We would like to keep it that way, so I oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Give me your name and address, and you got about 30 seconds.
I'll be quick. My name is Carter Gray. I live at 2947 Falkirk. I worked for OPD for a number of years and was assistant county attorney. I oppose the removal of the residential corridor, which is, of course, the only issue you can consider today, because I think residential corridors are important, as shown by their need to get a 2/3 vote of the city council to have them removed. I think that this is the last remaining open parcel in our area and should be allowed to continue in its residential status so it is be available for infill development in the future. I noticed that there was a similar subdivision recently at James and Highland, and I'm hopeful at some point in the future this will be used as an R3 subdivision as it's appropriately zoned. One last item I'd like to bring up is wonder if the appropriate notice was provided. As the notice stated, this was the removal of the residential corridor on Scenic Highway. However, there is a second identified residential corridor over James, which also impacts this property in a small portion of the southwest corner. So I think that in order to get proper notice, that both corridors need to be affected and removed if that is the will of the board, which of course I oppose.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions of the opposition at this time? Do you have any questions? Okay, we're ready for the applicant to give us your rebuttal, and you have a little more than 3 minutes because you didn't take all of your 10.
I'm Kelsey Johnson, 2069 LZ Avenue 38104. I'm Executive Director of the Hospitality Hub, who we are the applicant. And I listened to the opposition, and there was a lot of concern about children. And that's what this project is for. There's children who are homeless at Scenic Hills Elementary, at Memphis Business Academy, schools that are in this and close to this community. Raleigh, Egypt, Craigmont. In the city of Memphis this past year, we had 2,800 homeless children who registered for school. We're not talking about the ones who are truant. And one of the people who was opposed to this also talked about those people. Well, those people are the parents of these children, the mothers of these children. 89% of homeless children live with their moms. And we are here to help them get back on their feet. These cottages, studios, cabanas that we're building, they are not permanent residences. They are a way for a person to shelter with dignity. The other thing that's important about our city is if a husband, wife, and child, if their house burns down tonight, the Red Cross is going to give them 3 nights in a hotel and then tell them, go about your way. There's not one shelter in this city who will allow that family to stay together. The mother and child will probably come to our place for Salvation Army. The man will have to go to Union Mission or 3 miles away to Calvary Mission. This is a place where a family, a working family that's in crisis can shelter while we help them get back on their feet. This is the best model I've seen for assisting people who are experiencing homelessness. And we've been extremely effective at getting people out of homelessness. when we use this model. It's super successful downtown. One of the things that this city council, as well as our county commission, believes is that all homeless services should not be downtown, that other communities are struggling with homelessness. You heard one of the people in opposition talking about seeing people on her camera loitering and hanging out. We know that if you go into other parts of the Raleigh community, there's people living in tents and encampments. If you drive down James Road, there's people walking up and down James Road between Hollywood and Warford all the time. We will not be bringing any criminal element into this forested area. What we'd be bringing is beauty and care for the people who need it in that community, who need it in our community. So I just hope that you'll approve this project because it's a beautiful thing, and it's to assist people who need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more statements from we can't go back to the opposition. Any more statements to from the applicants? Okay.
Let me, I do have one. So I applaud what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
I'm a part of an organization that houses homeless veterans. Right on Lamar, 1385 Lamar Barron Heights Transitional Center. And
absolutely.
Our people don't bother the neighborhood. But what you just said, have you met with the community to discuss that?
Yes, sir, this past Sunday. This
Do not
past
speak
Sunday,
out.
we had a meeting at the church that is right next door to the property.
I would hope that somehow you could have a meeting with the people after hearing what you're saying to see if there's some type of compromise, and if not, then we have to make a decision at that point. But I know the area, and I'm sensitive to communities. Anyone who knows me, neighborhoods mean a lot because those folk have to live there and see it every day. Right. And I understand that. But it is needed. And, homelessness is all of our problem. Yes. It's not them. It's all of us. But for the grace of God, all of us could be homeless, And I would hope that you could come together and have a meeting with them. I heard there are people who did not get notified. If there's any way you could do that, I'd be most appreciative. Because I believe these are loving people, and hearing what some may be hearing what you just said for the first time, that what this would actually be. Right. That you're not bringing in an element that would destroy the area. I just hope that there could possibly be compromise met to where they may welcome this with some changes or modifications, like you leave all of those trees up to where you don't see the place.
That's the plan, sir.
I'd like to pick up on your point, Daryl. I think you make a good one.
All right.
I don't have enough information to vote on this. Archimania is going to need to provide a lot more data, in my opinion, to make this decision. We need to see a site plan. We need to see renderings. We need to see elevations if possible. I know that a quick question for Brett. Would they have to come back after this and they have to, this is just the residential corridor vote, and then they'd come back with a final plan?
Excuse me. No, so this has a couple of items. So as Ms. Cobbs mentioned, it does have a companion BOA case for a variance for the use. Technically, this is a residential use. It is a residential corridor, but in the UDC, it's not defined as the use that's allowed in the residential corridor. This is just for the corridor revocation, and that would then go to City Council for a vote. So it's just to remove that corridor, and the main reason is because the drive that comes through there, and so this would be the vote that you would have, and it would not come back.
Got you.
So that does still have to get a use variance at the Board of Adjustment.
Gotcha. I do feel like you could make the neighbors have legitimate points. You also are providing, I think it's a great use that's needed. But you don't have enough information to provide to the neighborhood or to us that allows us to make a good decision or allows the neighborhood to get comfortable with the use because they don't see a site plan, they don't see renderings, they don't see a landscape plan, they don't understand the buffering between your improvements and potentially their neighborhood, and we don't either. So for me, I can't even make a good decision about whether this is a good idea or not.
Could you hold it for 30
Can I make a
days?
statement?
Sure, go ahead.
Johnson,
That's why I
this is
wanted to
Frank
talk about
Joseph.
this while you're still up there.
Yes, sir. As you heard, we were at Scenic Hills United Methodist Church this past Sunday. The pastor he's back there right now. And we brought renderings, a whole PowerPoint showing site plan out with. And so had we known we could have brought that here, we would have brought it today. But we're more than willing to give more information, to meet with the community again, and share our vision for this site.
Okay,
I don't need,
excuse me.
no one from
Excuse
the
me.
audience needs to speak.
Excuse me. We need to maintain decorum here, and so we can't have any shouting out.
Excuse me, decorum, thumbs up or thumbs down?
Okay, are
Hello,
you,
Taylor Webb, Brockfield Engineering,
Okay.
1355 Linfield. All the information that you're looking for was presented with the BOA case, because there's two components to this. This is simply the revocation. They could not go forward with this, and the residential corridor still be removed, and it's not tied to what the future, I mean, it's good to know, but we have all those materials. Those materials are in planning right now under the BOA case. That just wasn't seen as part of this endeavor. As far as, because there's multiple levers to pull. This could tell UCB, then it goes before 3 readings, because it's an ordinance in front of city council. And then there's also a compendium BOA case, where we really get into the nuts and bolts of the use and what the neighborhood would be comfortable with. Like right now we have an undisturbed 50-foot vegetative buffer. Speaking just to the residential corridor portion of it, this has been under a residential corridor for almost 50 years. And it's obviously a very good place to develop residential, but this one hasn't been done. And a lot of the reasons for that is because of there's heavy terrain change along that area of buffer that we're gonna include. I believe it's 20 feet, 3-to-1, 2-to-1 slopes. Even if you wanted to build, you couldn't get into that area to do a residential neighborhood. And that's kind of what we're talking about now. And the stuff with the use and how that interacts with the neighborhood and whether there is or isn't negative impact, that was more a question for the BOA, we felt. And that's why we didn't present those to this body. So that was just, we weren't trying to withhold any information. I wanted you to know that, we have all that prepared. We've done our homework.
Well, Madam Chair, I would say we do have that information in the Board of Adjustment case. If the board would like to see the site plan and the renderings with that case, we could pull it up here.
I would like.
I think we should hold, I'm sorry.
I think it would be best to hold this case and to have the applicant meet with the neighborhood, because I don't think we can fix that in this.
would you like to make that
meeting.
motion?
Well, I think it's up to the applicants.
Do we need to close it out first?
Okay.
With respect, Jared Bingham, 1502 Harvard Avenue, Memphis, Tennessee, 38104. So, we started this project quite a ways back. Councilwoman Logan was the sponsor on the city council side, and we held a very robust set of public meetings with public notice and press and gajillions of emails at the Scenic Hills Elementary School was the largest one. And we had a crowd that was not sure that they wanted social services in the neighborhood. But by the end of the night, we had one consensus, because it is a good use and people are good-hearted and the plans are beautiful and those things tend to bring people together. I think the animosity in today's room is really around the notice coming late and people feeling thrown off guard and having not attended the April 18th meeting. And so what I would hope is if we have 3 hearings at City Council what I would hope is that we have meetings between now and the third hearing of City Council, robust meetings and open invitations for tours of the hub and walking sites. And I'd love for you to see more of the renderings and plans here. But I would like for you to approve the process and let City Council then move towards their work as a legislative body that's for the community and supportive of the community, and let all the constituents hear all the things that need to be heard. And we love this work and we love this community, and I'm not interested in fighting with the neighborhood about something, and neither will the City Council be. But that allows us to move forward with our plan, and of course you have the authority to do as you wish, but that would be my deep hope, please. You can see here, it is a gorgeous use. The hub, when we renovated the inspection station downtown, that property went from being a blighted property to a $10 million asset. When we renovated our 18 to 24-year-old project on Claybrook Avenue in the medical district, that street went from being one of the worst streets in Midtown to being a street that you can walk your dog and your child in a stroller down now. We bring community development and assets where we come, and we're hoping that you'll approve this for its next step. In the meantime, we're very committed to having open meetings, and we will today extend that invitation.
Thank you. Are there any more questions of the applicant? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting.
Chairwoman.
Move approval of agenda item number 15, RC 2024-001.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
I just wanted, Kendra, would you mind going back to the site plan? Or there was a colored site plan? That one. Well, that's interesting. And how many units is it?
So there are 10 studio units, and looks like 7 cottages.
10 on 11 acres. Okay, very low density.
Chairman, that was a motion to put a hold on it.
That's right. Yes. Okay. And that's on the floor.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going back to a motion. Well, she didn't make the motion.
Well, I think
Madam Chair,
Brown did.
Oh,
I don't think we got the motion in the second on a hold. I think there was discussion, but there was not a formal motion and a hold.
Jennifer, did you make the motion?
Suggested, but
She
the
didn't. She
applicant
did
seems
not.
against
Well,
it, so that's.
I will move that we hold this item for 30 days.
And I second that.
okay. We have a motion on the floor to hold this case for 30 days. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to add, Mr. Kelsey, I like what you guys are doing. I just wish, I wish the community was on board with you guys, similar to what Mr. Thomas kind of brought up with that. I mean, I don't think you guys are necessarily hurting the community. I just think it needs to be a conversation there to where they are comfortable with you guys coming into the community as well. So I think it may be some synergy there, but you have to find that real synergy. So, but I'm okay with the hold as well.
Any further discussion?
I'm going to vote no on the hold, only because this project is so low density on 11 acres. It's very few units. None of the neighbors are going to know they're even in there. And you have an enormous amount of relief. Please don't speak for the audience.
Please.
There's a lot of relief if you look at Taylor's survey with his topo. You have a ton of relief along the eastern, northern, and western parts of the property line. So that'd be my reasons for that aren't going to be changed. That right now will just be a trail that goes around. That's why they're not making any improvements along those that part of the site. So that's it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote, and I think we should vote individually.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Wilbanks?
No.
Mr. Toles?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what are we voting on the hold?
Hold, the hold.
Okay.
We're voting yes.
Okay.
Mr. Gill?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Dr. Pritchard?
Yes.
Chair Sharp?
Yes.
Got 5 yes, 2 no, no, 6 yes, 2 no. So motion carries.
Motion carries. Okay, we're holding it for 30 days.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we'll go to item 16. It's 52024-001 Cordova, 16-lot residential subdivision at 1260 Dexter Lane. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions.
Okay. Applicant, can you give us your name, address, and then we'll hear the case?
Good morning. My name is David Baker. I'm with Fisher Arnold. The address for the record is 9180 Crestwind Hills Drive, Memphis 38125.
Thank you. We're ready for the presentation.
Alexis Longstreet with the DPD presenting on subdivision case 2024-001, 1260 Dexter Lane for a 16-lot residential subdivision. This is in a corresponding case with a rezoning proposed for this same property that is also on the agenda, in which I guess we'll wait for that. But we will be expecting opposition for the speaker to come up today. So as I mentioned, this is a 16-lot subdivision. The property lots meet all required setbacks for the residential zoning. It is dual zoned for conservation agriculture with the proposed zoning of single-family residential R6. This property was considered consistent with the Memphis 3.0 future land use. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. About 149 letters of public notice were sent out back on January 12th of this year. This property is located within Cordova. Here's a vicinity map. It sits on the corner of Dexter Lane and Cordova. It is abutting other residential properties development at the moment, as this lot currently sits vacant. It is surrounded by other residential zoning districts, as well as conservation ag, which promotes for residential use. And the proposal for the zoning for the residential 6 will allow the smaller lots on that said property that is currently conservation agriculture zoned. And here's the proposed preliminary plan. The developer did go back after receiving just some concern from someone who attended a meeting back over the summer when this was originally introduced to the neighborhood regarding the cul-de-sac in the rear that would be abutting, yet again, as I mentioned, those already developed residential properties. Proper screening will be proposed. There is detention areas as well as right-of-way dedications proposed by the developer. And adequate landscaping has been proposed, and as well as landscaping shall be included on the final plat that is to be submitted for review after the subdivision goes through approval from you all and the zoning change is allowed and approved through City Council as well. So this lot is the proposed for the 16 lots ranging between 6,500 and about 6,700 square feet with a minimum lot width of 50 feet. All of the surrounding developments and some pre-existing plan developments have smaller lots with smaller widths as well. They're actually proposing something that is very familiar and as well as in keeping with the surrounding area and residential zone properties. And the conditions were that all the minimum lot width shall be 50 feet. All homes shall be built with hook side-loaded garages to keep from having front-loading facing garages, as well as the proposed cul-de-sac is to be a public street. It has to be designed as a minor local street to meet those pavement and curb cuts and sidewalk requirements, and as well as if Cordova Road and Dexter Lane shall be dedicated, then it has to be improved and approved by city engineering standards as well. And as I mentioned again, a detailed landscaping plan must be included in the final plat to be submitted for approval. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions of her at this time?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could I suggest that we might hear the presentation for 25 as well, since they're companion cases? We can let you guys have that information and then hear from the opposition.
Okay. So we're going to hear case number 25 now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I will say that the presentations are very similar in that manner, so I won't actually just go through and give you an entire presentation all over again. But as I will reiterate that this is a rezoning proposal for Conservation Ag to Residential Single Family 6, which will allow for smaller lots on the 3.89 acres being proposed for development. And I will reference, here is the subject property, the plot plan that's being proposed by the developer. This is mainly the information to be included. So between the plot plan and as well as the site plan for reference, this is what we are looking at from the standpoint of the zoning change proposal.
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Longstreet, okay. Any questions of Ms. Longstreet? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the presentation of the applicant. And how many, there's opposition here, okay. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yes, our proposal is for the single-family residential, 16 lots. The lot sizes are equal to, comparable to the adjacent property owners, properties. The house size that we're proposing is 2,500 square feet, which is in some cases larger than some of the adjacent properties, but actually it does meet and complies with what is in the neighborhood as well. Originally, we had designed this with a median within that cove or cul-de-sac. And after our neighborhood meeting and discussions with some of the neighbors, we removed that and added that 10-foot that was going to be in a median to our south property line to create a landscape buffer. We are proposing along Dexter Lane and Cordova Road a wooden site-proof fence with brick columns, and then the balance of the property would be a 6-foot-tall wood fence to match what is currently there with some of the existing residents. So, having said that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions at this time before we listen to the opposition? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're ready for the opposition. You have 10 minutes.
My name is Diane McCall, and I live at 8518 Farley Avenue. As you look at that map, those two lots on the right, my house backs up to that second one. So my house backs up to that, one of the shallowest lots. My husband Paul and I purchased our custom-built beautiful home in 2005 from our church friends. The location of our home means that we're one of the families who will be the most affected if this development is allowed to proceed as planned, because the discharge of the existing natural drainage line sits on our property. Over the past 18 years, we've watched as city leadership has made poor choices that have affected us, our property values, and our peaceful way of life in so many ways. Beginning with the annexation of Cordova without any kind of vote, which many people did not want and just as many have fought to undo. We've had to fight the addition of a strip club in Cordova. We watched the loss of 180 acres worth of trees to a developer who went bankrupt and left the land stripped and barren for years. That property was eventually used to build Riverwood Farms Elementary. As a result of the school being built, we've had to deal with parents dropping their children off along the edge of our neighborhood so they can walk the rest of the way to school, then speeding down our streets as they rush to get wherever they're going. We saw the loss of a prestigious private school, Harding Academy. Instead, now we have two Shelby County schools on either side of us, and we endured daily traffic jams to the point that emergency vehicles could not get through if they had to. One thing you have to keep in mind is these are both charter schools, so parents are bringing their children in individual cars, and it's 2-lane roads going into both of these schools. So we have to go down 2-lane roads that are served only by stop signs. Traffic in either direction from our home is a nightmare when school is in session, and you can sit at the 3-way stop at Dexter Lane and Macon for a very long time in the afternoons year-round. Our post office has been affected to the point that the outside mailbox was taken away. We're denied the simple essential service of being able to drop our mail off safely and conveniently at our local post office. We've had to endure the addition of a cigar bar at the very entrance to our neighborhood, a property owned by Guild Properties. While the owner's a nice person, that doesn't change the fact that we've had to deal with an excessive number of cars and the stench of cigars when we walk out our front doors, try to sit in our backyards, or when we drive home from the grocery store. A food truck park was added in 2020, and it's been a nuisance to our neighborhood as the Memphis Police Department, Mayor Jim Strickland, and our city council members are aware. Most recently, a daiquiri bar was allowed to go in, and now we have more congestion in the area and people who are most certainly drinking and driving in the area surrounding our homes. The once peaceful community of Old Cordova that was founded on farms, flowers, and fellowship has become overrun with cheap homes in excessive numbers, and we're here to beg you not to do this. One by one, as these things have unfolded, we've lost a lot of great neighbors. On their way out, they would almost inevitably say, "You better get out now. Cordova is going downhill. Leave now while you can." Cordova has sadly but rightfully earned the nickname the Dirty Dova. If this project is allowed to proceed as planned without taking our concerns into consideration, all those people who left will be able to look back at us and say, "I told you so." In addition to all of that, I just want to make everyone aware that our planner was not aware that we worked on this case for months and months and months and months and months. We had extreme opposition when it was originally PD 2023-013. This goes back to July of 2023. We worked so hard on that case. And now I spoke with her this morning, she wasn't even aware that there was any connection between the two. So just know that there's a lot of opposition to it. Traffic, destroying the environment, our peaceful way of lives. These houses are going to be right on top of us. So that's my position. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. We have one more? Okay. Name and address.
Good morning. My name is Wesley Lay, 8502 Farley Avenue. This may be a norm for the agenda and presentations, but this is my opposition to this proposal. It says approved with conditions. And the history of our community and neighborhood, we've seen 2 or 3 developers come in and say, we're going to do this. But the end results are always different. They are changed somewhere in the implementation and the real. Reality is things do not work out. So I've worked 50 years, and I can throw this anecdote out. I've worked 50 years in X-ray. The word X-ray comes from the unknown. And this is what we are suffering with, the unknown of what actually gets approved and actually built. The promises have been made, things have been said in meetings. In fact, we were told just recently that this property would have a fence around the entire property. We have no guarantees. We were told that the drainage systems would be taken care of. Again, there's no guarantees. As well as my colleague, my neighbor said, the impact of traffic. There's a recent report, and I'll bring it to your attention. It's on the news now, that parents are driving kids to school is outpacing the bus delivery of schools. And we are surrounded by several schools, and that car traffic, as my colleague neighbor said, can impact emergency vehicles. It is jam-packed. The roads that are adjacent to us are marked for 15-mile-an-hour traffic. 15 miles with heavy curves in there and narrow streets. There's no suggestion for improving traffic. There's no suggestion for improving drainage. There's no guarantee that we will have or maintain our property values. That is why I'm standing in opposition of this. If you define all these things and ensure that they are carried out, I would have no objection. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the opposition at this time? Any questions of the opposition? We're ready for your rebuttal.
Thank you. Just briefly, on the original or the most recent application that they were discussing called for a lot smaller lots, about 30 feet wide, if I remember correctly. Also, they had some areas designated as parking areas. We since have revised that with our application to be very compatible with the adjacent properties. And in looking at the drainage, our initial report and initial studies is looking at picking that drainage that comes out of Ms. McCall's lot in an inlet catch basin and then piping it on up through our system and into a detention basin that we've illustrated there. And actually are meeting with Ms. McCall next week to look at that and have further discussions with that. Regarding traffic, we are doing the proper and required right-of-way dedications for our property along Cordova and along Dexter Road to help facilitate any of the future plans and so forth for traffic in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Any questions of the applicant? Okay, we need a motion.
Move approval of agenda item number 16, case number S2024-0001.
Second.
Are we going to do them one at a time or both?
Excuse me. I did want to add a friendly amendment to an amendment to this that it's not technically necessary, but I think a lot of times when we have a rezoning case that has a subdivision companion, we will add a condition that the subdivision approval is contingent upon the rezoning being approved. So if I may add that condition, which would read, the subdivision approval is subject to the approval of Z24-01.
Okay, so are we going to vote on this as one, 25 and 6? Are we going to vote on them together or separately?
I can do an individual roll call if you'd like.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's it.
Oh, separate cases, yes.
Yes, separately.
Okay, thank you. All right, you have moved on number
16.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Yes. 16. Yes.
No, so I'm very familiar with the Cordova corridor, travel there, kids at Riverwood, so I understand the traffic portion of what you guys are talking about. That is something, I don't know that in all honesty and transparency, I don't know that this body would be the body that, and I'm talking to you as a Cordova resident as well, this body would be the actual body that you guys could come to about the traffic. So we wouldn't, it's a closed portion. It's a closed portion. I'm talking to you. We can talk later after this if you want to hold a one-on-one conversation. But as far as the traffic goes, the streets just have to be widened by the city. I've tried to figure out how to get that done myself just because of the influx of development and opportunities that I see in the Cordova district as well. But that's something that we wouldn't be able to control. I like the project. I think it, makes sense for the area, and I understand your concerns as well. So I appreciate you guys coming out and sharing.
Can I
Thank
ask
you.
a question though?
No, ma'am.
We can't.
We'll talk later.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion amongst our board members? Okay. Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. Do you want to do it separately or individually? It's up to you. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're ready for our next case, number 25.
Yes, number 25, Z2024-001 Cordova, rezoning from Conservation Agriculture District to Residential Single Family R6 District to allow for a subdivision at 1210 Dexter Lane. Staff recommends approval.
Do I hear a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion amongst our board members on 25? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. We're ready for our next motion. Number 27.
27, zoning text amendment 2024-001, a proposed text amendment to the UDC regarding solar energy systems. Staff recommendation is approval.
Okay, applicant.
Good morning. Nicholas Wardrop with the Division of Planning and Development. Of course, this is zoning text amendment, so the applicant is the Division of Planning and Development. This is a zoning text amendment. This is a zoning text amendment proposal regarding solar energy systems. So if you've been following this case, we've been on this since September when the County Commission asked us to study the impact of solar development and provide recommendations regarding potential amendments to the UDC. The relevant summary of those findings are that we did find that these projects have a positive economic and environmental impact at the countywide and local scale. So at both the countywide level and at the local, in the immediate area of the development. These are positive projects, generally speaking. However, we also found that the UDC standards regarding these systems are outdated. When the UDC was adopted back in 2010, 2011, the situation in the solar industry was very different. We were not anticipating these sort of very large scale utility scale projects happening. So our standards are outdated. They need to be updated to be applicable to the current state of the industry and where we expect the industry will be going in the future. So in summary, this proposed amendment will make our standards more appropriate to the current and expected state of the solar industry without undermining the benefits that we've identified as being associated with solar development. So as I stated, we produced a research report at the request of the County Commission. And these are the key findings, the major findings from those research reports. First, and USS up here stands for utility scale solar. So we're talking about large scale solar projects that are selling to the TVA, and the electricity goes in the common grid, right? We found that utility scale solar is of comparable or lesser intensity. So it works comparable intensity and environmental concern than the two other major land uses which are permitted in the CA district, those being, of course, agriculture and single-family residential. It is a significantly less intense and environmentally concerning land use than industrial uses, like the ones we restrict to IA, GMP, and WD districts. We found that the increased proliferation of USS in the rural parts of the county will significantly increase property tax revenues without the public costs associated with conventional subdivision development. So of course, we think you're probably going to hear this morning about farmland loss, right? When we think about farmland loss, we're often talking about single-family residential development. Well, both solar and single-family residential development have this sort of associated property tax impact, but one of those things has a much, much larger public cost associated with it, right? So that was a major research finding. We found that USS provides a legitimate and preferable alternative to residential development for farmland in transition, right? So there are things, there are big economic factors that are outside of zoning that are pressuring farmland to transition. The state of Tennessee expects that between now and 2040, 400,000 acres across the state will be transitioned to some other use, right? The average farmer in this country is 57 and a half. That's not something we can handle at a zoning level. However, we do think that solar development is a preferable alternative if farmland is to transition to subdivision development. And we found that, speaking specifically about North Shelby County, the Millington adjacent area, we do have reason to expect that it will have an overall positive economic effect on the area. So the way this presentation will be structured is I'm not going to put up exact text in the presentation. We can talk about that after the conclusion of the presentation. I can pull it up if there's questions about that. But I'll go through a brief summary of all the changes that are proposed with this CTA. So before we talk about what we're proposing to change, these are the major things that we are proposing to maintain from the existing UDC. So one, barbed wire fencing is not currently permitted in the CA district except for maintaining livestock. That will not be changed under this proposal. We are not proposing any changes to the regulations concerning arrays that are mounted to buildings. Third, solar facilities would remain a by right land use in our 3 industrial districts. The next thing is that ground-mounted arrays would remain prohibited in front yards, so you would still not be able to put panels in your front yard. And there is existing in the UDC a provision that any unused equipment must be removed in 1 year. That's also state law and would not be changed. So now getting into what we're proposing to change as part of the CTA. First, the UDC as it is today says that all ground-mounted solar energy systems larger than 100 square feet are solar farms. That means if any one of us a standard solar panel is 4x6, so 24 square feet. It means if any one of us go and put 5 panels in our backyard today, under the UDC as it exists, we're supposed to treat that the same as a 1,500 acre site out in Millington. I think we can all agree that that is something that doesn't really make that much sense. So the proposed standard is we would separate ground-mounted solar energy systems into 2 distinct uses, one called utility scale, and that's anything that's bigger than 20 acres, and community scale, which would be anything under 20 acres. As I stated, the UDC as it is today, any array larger than 100 square feet is considered a principal use. The proposed standard would allow up to 20 acres of a solar energy system to be considered an accessory use, so long as they meet the standards for accessory uses, which is that they are clearly incidental and subordinate to a permitted principal use on the same site. Today, a solar farm, which again, we're changing that definition under this proposal, is permitted in nearly all districts by special use permit and is a by right use in CA and our industrial districts. This proposal would require a special use permit for utility scale systems within the CA district. And then it would also require a conditional use permit, which goes before the Board of Adjustment for community scale systems in several of our commercial districts, and community scale would retain by right status in CA. It would also prohibit both types of systems in our more dense residential districts, so the RU districts, R6 and R3. Our existing standard regarding ground-mounted accessory arrays, so like household scale arrays, is that they must be adequately screened. We're proposing to make that a little more explicit and say that they require a Class 1 buffer. Today, all solar farms require a Class 3 buffer. A solar farm under the UDC today is considered a major utility, and all utilities require a Class 3 buffer. Our proposed standard would be that community scale systems would require a Class 1 buffer, and that utility scale systems would require a Class 3 buffer unless they're in an industrial district or are set back at least 150 feet, in which case, if they fulfill either of those 2 conditions, a Class 2 buffer would be sufficient. Today, solar farms are subject to the standard district minimum setbacks. We're proposing basically overriding those district setbacks with setback provisions that are specific to solar. So community scale systems would be subject to a 50-foot minimum setback on all sides. Utility scale systems would require a 50-foot setback in our industrial districts and 100 feet in all other districts. Utility scale systems would also have to be set back at least 300 feet from property lines on which they abut residential use. Today, there are no limitations on how much of the C8 district is available for solar development. Under the proposed standard, they would have to be a half mile from existing sites. Today in the UDC, there are no local requirements regarding decommissioning, planning, and securities. There's state law on setting money aside to cover the decommissioning costs at the end of life for these facilities. That state law only applies to facilities that are operated by a lessee of the land, right? So what we're doing under this proposed standard is taking that state law that applies to facilities that lease the land and just copy pasting it and applying it also to facilities that own the land. So they would have to either, if they own the property, they would have to provide a security to the county. If they lease the property, they would have to provide us proof that they've complied with state law. Here is the proposed use chart. As you can see, we're striking this solar farm use. This is as it exists today. And then we would be splitting it into two uses with the, permitted as you see here. So utility scale would require a special use permit in most districts and retained by right status in the industrial districts. And community scale systems would be permitted by right in CA and by conditional use permit in many of our commercial districts. So in conclusion, of course, we recommend approval. And if there are any questions about the exact text, I'm happy to pull that up. I'm also happy to talk more about our research findings. I can pull that up as well. Thanks.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Waldrop? Okay, are we ready to hear from the opposition or? Give us your name and address and your statement.
Good morning, I'm Chuck Brady. I live at 6119 Royal Muse Drive in Millington, Tennessee. I want to speak in opposition to the code changes, and I want to put forth some common sense additions that would make the code changes prevent the ruining of North Shelby County. Let's start by talking utility scale solar power plants. They're 2.5 square miles in size. They're the size of the entire downtown. So these are not small items. The heavy industry, the permits that planning and development have put out for approval all state it's heavy industry. Well, heavy industry is not allowed in a conservation and agriculture district, and the special use permit is what they're putting in place to make an exception. So if it is an exception, then the standards should be rigorous. The report you just heard, that utility scale solar power plants are comparable to or less intense than neighborhoods, farms, and single-family residents. The report, if you look at it, has not one stitch of evidence to back that up. If you look at, could you put up this first slide? Sure. That's a 2.5 square mile solar power plant. You see any vegetation? You see any green underneath that? That land has been stripped of all topsoil and compacted. That is hard pan. And when it rains, this is what happens. The next slide will show that. You have tremendous runoff. These industrial utility-scale solar power plants have long-term adverse effects, and their excess erosion, sediment pollution, and chemical contamination of the soil and water. These sites will be brownfield sites in 20 years. There's no reuse besides heavy industry. The idea that they can be put back into farming, there's no evidence for that, and there's an abundance of evidence that that will not happen. Counties across Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia are banning industrial-scale solar power plants or restricting the projects to heavy industrial zones, which is where they belong. Most of these restrictions in these counties have come about because of the abuses that the counties have suffered when they approved utility-scale solar power plants on farmland. Now let's look at the economics. They say the economics are powerful in favor of utility-scale solar. Not the case. The agriculture industry in Shelby County generates $780 million per year. That's in direct output. $780 million a year. 9,745 full-time jobs in agriculture. Let's look at an industrial-scale solar plant like the two that are proposed in North Shelby County. They pay $253,336 in tax revenues per year for the 20-year life of the project. That number is from the Shelby County Assessor's Office. If you hear or read about any additional tax revenue, it's not true. That's what the assessor gets from the Silicon Ranch solar farm that's already in operation in North Shelby County. There'll be no jobs because both of the proposed 2.2 square mile sites are going to be built by out-of-town contractors. The most that you'll see is 2 full-time maintenance jobs per site. Solar power plants, regardless of their size, are very inefficient. The only way they exist is through generous federal and state tax credits, the waiving of property taxes, zero interest loans, and most importantly, generous rates from utilities that are forced to buy the power, like TVA. In North Carolina, the taxpayers lose $2 billion a year, $2 billion, subsidizing utility-scale solar is already in operation in the state. Now, there's several common sense amendments that are added to the proposed code changes could not eliminate, but regulate utility-scale solar. First, utility-scale solar does not belong around neighborhoods. So that's what a utility-scale solar power plant looks like. That's downtown Memphis. That goes from the river to 240, from uptown to the south end, including the FedEx Forum and all the other things. That's that's only one. That's only one of the 2 proposed. Imagine that being stripped down to clay. You think there would be runoff problems? You betcha. We propose that the code limit the industrial scale solar power plants to 600 acres, which is 1 square mile. That's no small amount, 1 square mile. And we propose that they be 5 miles apart. The speaker who spoke for planning and development said they put in a ½ mile distance separation. Both of the proposed solar power plants, each one 2.2 square miles, has half, because they cross roads and go around bends, they already have half-mile separation between arrays. So virtually, it means nothing. And what the utilities will do is they'll daisy chain one site, half a mile another site, and you'll have them all in a row. We want to limit the number of 600-acre utility-scale solar in North Shelby County in the Conservation and Agriculture District to 5 square miles or 5 sites. That equals 9% of the farmland in North Shelby County. That's a large amount. There's no other part of the county has anything like that. We want 900-foot setbacks. This is not a subdivision, and this is not a strip mall. These are massive sites, and that's appropriate. And the only decommissioned bond that will work is a cash bond. All of these sites are being fronted by shell companies, limited liability corporations that hide the parent company from liability. So if the site doesn't work out and they leave, the county, they can't sue a limited liability corporation because it has no assets. So this TVA is not building these. RWE is the parent company of one of them, but they're not taking any liability. Silicon Ranch, not taking any liability.
Excuse me, Mr. Brady, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, ma'am. I would ask you to say no to the amendment the way it's stated now, and to have planning and development add the 5 conditions for responsible utility-scale solar in the Conservation and Agricultural District. That's the present setbacks. Does that look like something that you'd want to see? That's right across the street from an elementary school in North Shelby County. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Mr. Brady? Do we have any questions of Mr. Brady? Okay, hearing none, we're ready for the response back from the applicant.
So I do want to mention a few items. Number one, the last picture you were shown, that site is within the Millington city limits. So you know, I can't speak to Millington's landscaping provisions, but of course the UDC does not apply. Another thing is this research project we did was a 3-month project where we interviewed several folks in the room here. We interviewed solar industry experts. We interviewed academics. We reviewed academic literature. We reviewed publications by the state that were meant to advise local governments on these issues. We stand by the economic impact estimations that are in this report. In particular, we spoke to folks high up in the State Office of State Assessed Properties. So those are my 2 things. I'll turn it over to Director Zena if he has any other rebuttal. Thanks.
Thank you. John Zena. I do have just a couple of comments. As you all know, this a zoning text amendment is not does not deal with a particular case. What we have proposed here are a set of changes to the existing law that ultimately, you are in the position of recommending to our legislative bodies, the commission and the city council, to consider to change the Unified Development Code to regulate these types of uses throughout Memphis and unincorporated Shelby County. Yes, there are changes that relate to the Conservation and Agriculture District. Those are not unique to North Shelby County with respect to these changes. It's anywhere where we have conservation and agriculture mapped in the city of Memphis and unincorporated Shelby where these proposals are being submitted. In the process, of course, of making and amending law, the standard that we have to abide by, and ultimately the legislative bodies should also abide by, is there a rational basis for the regulation? And so in our opinion, based on the research that we have found, and acknowledging, yes, that the existing regulation that allows solar farms by right of any size is maybe inappropriate for how the industry has changed, that our recommendations do follow a rational basis for how those regulations change. And we have looked at the proposals that the opposition has submitted. Based on our research, we believe that those proposals are essentially taking it to the other extreme. And so in our opinion, there's not a rational basis to go from where the code is today to that extent. I would also just like to share that at least for the Conservation Agriculture District for utility scale solar, our recommendation is that these would be approved by special use permit, which you all know means that requires on a case-by-case basis review of the specific circumstances of that proposal by this body and by the legislative body. So what we're doing here is essentially setting minimum standards for the base code. And then when a special use permit is triggered on a case-by-case basis, those standards, things like setback and size and so forth, can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis given the circumstances of each individual case. And so that was the reason why we felt that our proposal had rational basis with respect to the base requirements that we're recommending, but also allowed the opportunity for community review and participation on individual cases when projects of a certain size were proposed. I'm available if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any questions before I close the public portion of the meeting?
I do.
Okay.
There seems to be a big difference between half a mile between the farms and 5 miles. Half a mile doesn't seem adequate to me. I mean, when you're talking about, like I say, a 2 square acre parcel, that's big. That's big. And then you're only putting a little bit between one and what could be another one. That I couldn't imagine that wouldn't have an enormous environmental impact. And I know that this will come before us in a case by case. But what was the rationale between having so little space between them versus having something in the code that really separates it? And as this industry develops, allows for when issues may come up later on where maybe a company is defaulting on their farm, it kind of slows it down and controls it more, I think. But what was the rationale for that?
Thank you. So the greatest extent that we saw in some of the model legislation we looked at was actually 2 miles. So 5 miles is orders of magnitude greater than the maximum we saw. And I'll also add, they're not here to speak on this, but we did get a letter from one of the industry representatives who was in opposition to even a half mile. And so from the industry perspective, there is efficiencies that they achieve in terms of supplying energy to the grid into transmission towers by having no distance separation at all. And so, in our point of view, what we found to be the most concerning was perhaps the setback from residential areas, not necessarily the distance between the two, but we wanted to acknowledge that that was a concern that some of the opposition had, but strike a middle ground between what works for the industry as well as what works for the surrounding area. I do also want to just share too that we talk about this as industry, but these are utilities. Utilities are a little bit different as there is obviously a public good in supply of electricity that everyone must benefit from. Not only throughout Shelby County, but throughout our entire area. And so it's a little bit different from that point of view. And so as we think about how we are regulating the distances, I think we also need to be thinking about, making sure that our regulations do not create inefficiencies for providing that public good.
I understand that, but it also seems to put a greater burden on the areas that are conservation agriculture and the surrounding communities. So it seems that they would bear a much greater brunt of, I'm all for solar, but this seems very concentrated in areas that are going to be affected. And this is not proven in terms of how the utilities and the companies that are getting into this are going to be good neighbors as opposed to maybe bad actors. So I would want a little more caution and a little more care for the neighbors rather than making it easy for the utilities. I think that would be, to me, more fair.
I understand those comments, if I may, and that is why we did put more emphasis on increasing that setback between these uses and residential properties that abut, so that the priority was the neighbors.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting. Can I get a motion?
Move approval of agenda item number 27, zoning text amendment 2024-001.
Okay, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion?